You are not breathing, you are breath. Now hear me out. There is a fine line between breath and awareness of breath and spiritual psychosis. Now whenever I speak, there's always perspective, but you are not breathing. On one scale, you are contracting, expanding. Going in depth with that scale, you are vibrating at a certain frequency. The frequency of the dichotomy of your existence as in yin and yang, as in masculine and feminine, as in expanding, contraction, is your ability to hover between the two fields of perceivable separation. As in, I'm a man, I'm not a woman, and a woman is not a man, yet we all share chromosomes, we all share a level of vitality that one cannot exist without the other. Simply speaking, in basic biology, breath isn't everything. It's in your awareness and it's in your lack of awareness. Breath is in between your interstitial cells. Once you understand breath in its entirety, the best way I can explain it, as I would say it to myself, is that fish are not drinking water to live. Fish are one with the water. They are not separate from the water or the ocean or the sea. The difference between fish and us is that they don't necessarily require the level of awareness that they are the sea. So their levels of fear are constructed in a different environment, in a different depth, as in the sea. We are here in the field of the expanded sea, which you would say void of the water or separate from the water. But are we? The reason I mention fish is because fish are in flow. They are with the water. They are one with the water. And what separates fish from us is that we are aware that we are not in water and we are aware of breath. So the difference between them and us, I would say, is that fish are breath. I would say is that fish is one with water and we are one with breath. We don't see it like that. Well, maybe some would if you are in the Vedic system, if you work with Qigong. But if you're not in any particular system, which is not the majority of people in this world, right? You just say, I'm breathing. And you would think it's not a big deal, but this construct changes the variances of the scope of how one perceives themselves and in reflection of the world the same. Worlds apart between one and the other, at least when it comes to perspective. We are breath. We are not just one with breath. What is happening is that we have the capacity to alter and manipulate breath with directionality. Now we can go so much more deeper, but deeper doesn't matter when you're not with the constructs of the fundamental. Directionality is what gives breath the capacity to create, destroy, no different than water, like water to a dam, right? You hold water in a dam, it's controlling water for energy systems and resources, as an example, in the way that water is used in that way. You've seen animation with Bugs Bunny where he's holding like the little crack in a dam, the wall that's cracked, and what happens if he lets go of the crack? You can see the potential of water once you actually harness water and you hone in on the power of water, right? And then you let go and you release when water seeks to attain its natural state of flow and of its expansive fluid nature of movement. You may argue, was the water ever really controlled, or was it just simply just contained? Was it just really altered, almost like one who is working with clay and making art with? So I would argue that the same is true, at least in the mind of the artist, which is the right side of the thinking mind, right? You would have to see within those lens, within these parameters, because this opens up the field of not just imagination, but your imaginatory sense is what the outside factions are trying to control, because they know that that is our connection of being childlike and being one with source consciousness per se. And having said that, is that one of the most beautiful value that a human possesses and wealth is that of art, of dance, of music, of creating things with their hands, of singing or choreographing something, as an example, right? Our imaginative or imaginatory minds, once we tap into it and create physical form body, is not void of breath. We are just no different than any being in this universe, is that we have the vibratory connection to our conscious body, like fish to fish and animals to animals, as an example. They work within the keys of their frequency exchange as vibratory fields, no different than a key to a hole opening up to a specific door, right? If you shape a key differently, if you have a different door lock mechanism as an example, then the door just won't open. Once you understand the mechanisms behind the door or the key, then as a locksmith, then you will start to master the art of opening doors or engendering or creating new doors to open up, more sophisticated locking mechanisms as to, and anyway, why would you want to lock a door in the first place? But as an example, the same thing with that is that once, a locksmith would be deemed as black and white, right? You would say, well, I know exactly this and everything's structural and they're working with precision. But think about the very first locksmith or a locksmith that has to open up a door or a customer wanting to go to this locksmith for a door that they've never worked with. They have to at some point tap into their creative side, right? The artistic side and the childlike side. Because they enjoy what they do, they're connected, they're in alignment, they're in resonance with it. And when you're in resonance with something, then you attract levels of coherence. And your nature of coherence is what now attracts you to the level of abundance and the joy, because now you're aligning yourself with customers. The same customers that would see a locksmith, the same customers or clients that would come to see an acupuncturist, because I align myself within the healing arts as an example, right? When you're inhaling, your nature is that you are naturally forming directionality of the airways entering and exiting your body. But that's limited to the way that we were taught. When you go deeper into your actual physiology and your biology, your entire embodiment, just like fish, we are connected to breath. What allows our passageways of our lung capacities to alter breath is why and how we're able to speak, how we're able to sing. And if you're into the sports, how you're able to emit your air and train your vasculature and your musculature to work and emit. So when you're lifting heavy weights and you're going to push something heavy, like for your chest muscles going this way, right? If you inhale, you're going to collapse. It's not just collapsing the lungs, but you're going to give a reverse directionality of your lungs as far as the intent. So when you exhale, you give directionality to your lungs into the intent of what you're doing, right? That is Kung Fu 101. So when somebody throws a punch in karate, that's why they go kia and into and out of the fist, because they already know, they have already mastered the art within the field of karate, as an example. You could argue just about any art. That sound resonance along with intention. You see, with breath, just like water can't be contained, but breath, although it can't be contained, this density field, breath allows for not just directionality, but it allows to engender new possibilities. Once you master the art of manipulating breath by being conscious of the breath that you are, then the artistic value of who you are and what you require or looking to achieve, coupled with breath, as in breath would be also synergistic with intention. Intention guided along with the already manifested breath. And just like water holds all memories, breath holds memories but also guides and governs memories. Just by using the example that water would be yin, and in comparison at least, and breath would be yang. So in this comparison, water would be female and breath would be male. And working synergistically, then your water body structure, right, along with your crystalline body structure, governing with your breath, is why your voice becomes your command. And your voice, when tapped in with your vision of structure, of your capacity to command, and your emotional state and well-being, the water, the ocean, right, starts to elicit an upright momentum of that vibration of intent with breath. And with intent, now you have the trinity of your ability and capacity to create, manifest whatever you choose, desire, or require to. When it doesn't happen, it's because one must now condition themselves to. If I'm telling you, you have the best, most powerful arms and legs to be a great fighter, but you go to the gym with me right now, you're gonna get your butt whooped. That's when now you're going to now see how you will expand your probabilities of your natural innate gifts, and now to, like a locksmith, like to see how are you going to now interchange this experience by training with some somebody and sparring with a whole bunch of people so that you can understand the artistic side or the chess side of fighting. In the fighting arts, yes, there's a malicious, violent side to it, because that's the whole one point is that you're wanting to protect yourself and your loved ones. But on the other side is also to understand that nature can be peaceful and nature can be violent. Nature can be tamed. And oftentimes nature can be contained, but there comes a point where nature has to actually evolve into chaos. And understanding the ferocity of chaos, understanding the ferocity of a hurricane or tornado, naturally speaking, not the ones that are created, these geostorms and all that stuff that are created, but when they naturally are created, it's because they are synergistically working in collapsing, completing interchanges of energetic information between different elements, such as the 5 elements, such as the air and the water, right? Because one is always engendering the other, one is always transmuting in the other, right? One is always collapsing while the other one's rebirthing. So the collapsing of water, right, means that what? The evaporation of water, it transmutes into air. The collapsing of air, right, or the condensation process means the air will have to pour back into water. And breath is becoming conscious of the energy exchange. And I would say 101, which could be an entire lifetime or many lifetimes, is to master the art of manipulating the 5 elements, because that's how we are being manipulated. And once we become alchemists and we become the scientists within our process, but also implementing the joy of it, right? Not dry, right? Not dry, but the joy and the artistic side of it, then you will understand how harmonics, resonance, and how she actually dances in this density field, right? And that's why many extraterrestrials and aliens, or whatever you want to call them, they forgot that because they've aged and they became so ancient as that. And also when you're in the lighter density fields of that, you're actually, it's not that you're void of soul or you're void of lower density fields of emotions, but they do not exist the same way when you're speaking of interdimensions. I'm just speaking on the level of quantum physics. I'm not even going I'm not going crazy. So this is vital, and the reason why I'm going to say this is vital for people to actually make this connection is because, look, you look at every single one of my videos, and I'm going to say this for a reason. There's an expanded reason for everything that I do, and I do it also for me, for my unraveling and for my highest good, right? As we're all mirrors to each other, right? So, my hair, man, what's going on? I don't like that. Okay, sorry. I was having a moment. If you go to any single one of my videos, this is how I work with my Kung Fu, right? It's not separate from when I'm making a video, it's not separate from when I'm speaking, and it's not separate when I'm actually practicing Kung Fu, or even when I'm about to go to sleep. I no longer sleep again. My body rests and it goes, the conscious mind leaves, but I go into an altered state. It's no longer just sleeping, right? It's a sleep state, but it's like becoming aware and conscious of that. And the whole reason why I'm going to say this is because just like air is to fish, and just like water is to humans, we're now bringing the dream state realm, which is the higher realms, right? Once you see within the 5 elements and start expanding the capacity of our 5 elements of experience beyond the filtering eyes and experiences, right? Is that the dream state realm, whether we like it or not, whether you're conscious of it or not, is starting to become in vivo. That's why a lot of us are walking as if we're in a dream, or nothing makes sense anymore. And then people are walking more zombified because they can't hide anymore, that they don't know what the hell they're doing in their life. Meaning like anything that's good, bad, or ugly, the mask cannot evade us. And I think a lot of new spiritualists think like finally their work is coming to pasture. It's a human experience for us to actually arrive here. There's a lot of people who are seeing themselves as very high. And I guess one would imagine by seeing my videos that you would think that I think like that, but that makes no sense, because for me to be high, that means somebody has to be low. You feel what I'm saying? When I was in my low, somebody has to be high. It's synergistic. We require each other. We are one single movement. We are working and walking in union. But unfortunately, for me to prove it, I would probably seek a master of an actual fish to teach that to us, because you simply just have to exist and be and flow and become one with water. And that's why the whales, right, the dolphins, they can intercommunicate in a more an expanded way of communicating, because they're already tapped into the conscious field of within their DNA and within the way that they're here. So they are our ancient teachers, right? And sometimes people are kind of corny. all these ascended masters. You know, it gets played out, and sometimes they have to go outside the box, and that's part of the evolution. You know, the titles. You know, everybody has a title of this or that or this that. At some point, can you at least get to go to the basics once again to realize that you are everyone reflecting back at you. And it sounds very childish and it sounds very kindergarten, but yeah, you have more fun in kindergarten. You can get a lot more done working with the most basic fundamental things, because you have to bring back and clean house and to see what's not working. So you have to take it to those fundamentals, right? Because nothing else can exist in the higher field until you grasp the fundamentals of who you are, which leads me to what I was about to explain, that if you go to any single one of my videos, I have a little over 120, 30 videos out there. Some of them are out there, some of them are not as out there. Every single one of them comes from my actual experience, that I have two sides of every story as far as what I put out there. I have a didactic side, which means an educational side, as I'm speaking as far as fields of possibilities. However, I have a practical side. Every single video I have there, I have a classroom setting, whether it's an actual Kung Fu, whether it's the metaphysics side of it, whether it's expanding more possibilities. We can take it to many variables, to the depths that we are able and capable of, and it all depends on, for example, I can't do it on my own. Well, I can, but when it comes to my individuality, right? But when it comes to the collective expansion and expansiveness of the joy of being human, which means interconnectedness and enjoying new possibilities with new parameters and new ways of seeing, and as far as new levels of variances, right? But it's the levels of coherence of saying and knowing that you're not separate. So when I say this to the intellectual thinking mind, which is a lot of people yet still, unfortunately, or the religious fanatics, and you don't have to be religious to be religiously conditioned. If you see me as dark or evil or something of that nature, that actually is a religious conditioning. If you're still living in the realm of that, yes, spiritual warfare is so real and it exists, but if you're still living and working in war, that's still within the aspects of religious conditioning down here in the depths, because that's how the platforms were integrated within our truths, and the way that they deliberately altered and fragmented our truths, which is the same criteria that manifested from this false light of Saturn. I always say Saturn energy, of both politics, religion, and even healthcare, right? All the natures of what we learned came from the false light. So I don't come here to bash people in the false light, because I was born into it just like you, right? So we needed to master everything that we're not before we could even speak on it, especially if you're an educator or if you're in the healing arts. How do you heal something that you know nothing of? And this is why I say that everything I speak of, I can teach it. And unfortunately, people just stay in scripture. People just stay in books. People just stay in their meditation. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you engender such a yin state, you will engender a level of spiritual psychosis without even realizing it. Because what happens is that the spiritual beings that are in spiritual psychosis isn't actual reality, it's a dimension, but to be disassociated within the depths of what is required with humans is forgetting your mission as to why you're here. If you're going to deconstruct somebody's beliefs or truths, then what is the remedy behind that? And people don't have that. Why? Because they talk out of their asses, but they can't teach a class on it in their own way. And I don't mean physically teach a class, but again, that's when you say you're connected to an elder, then that elder will walk with you, through you. And if mama, grandma, and grandpa bear is not there to help to educate someone who's open-minded, who has ears to hear, even if they're doing something really wrong, you feel what I'm saying? If you see somebody like me that's speaking and you have no rational connection to what I'm even talking about, what's going to happen is that I'm going to exist in your mind based on the depths of the way you vibrate and gravitate. Right? So I'm simply just a mirror. I'm simply just a version of you. I don't care about that person that you're creating in your mind. You didn't even hang out with me. You didn't have a cup of coffee with me. You don't know my story, not that you should, right? But you haven't met me, which leads me to spiritual psychosis. This is where people have been indoctrinated to stay separate between the spiritual realm and the palpable realm. And this is why it's important more than ever to be kind of like a layman, right? Instead of showing your powers to the world, show the world their powers, one person at a time, one group at a time. Because that's what brings great hope to the vitality of this new earth. Me alone talking on videos and cameras all day, it's great if one person's following me, and I will continue to do so. I mean, following me as far as like following my platform if one person's listening, you know. But the whole point is to engender change. And if there's stagnation outside of me, then that's a mirror as for me to see what is it within me that's stagnating. As an example, I hold accountability from actions of people, of anything, even if it has zero to do with me. And that is taking levels of accountability to integrate into systems that are not meant to stay firm or solid. They're systems where systems of what you're working with, as far as integration systems, I call them, because that aligns with integrity, is to expand with it and sometimes to collapse systems, right? So when you're accounting for and with everything, then you are developing an integral system that will work in harmony with your mission, your blueprint, the love that you are expressed. It could be through music, it could be through art, right? It could be and is, could and should be with why you are here. And almost always it's the one thing that comes easiest to you. That's the truth. It could be baking pies, it could be baking, it could be cooking. Do you understand that even if the market is saturated, you don't exist in that market, as an example? You have to sit with that. The world is forgetting something. The world is becoming more industrialized. They're becoming even more new agey. Hippie 2.0 is here. They're all over the place. Judgment 2.0 now. There's people who are supposedly, like, there's people who call me out, and I'm the first one that'll hear, right? But the thing is, it's like, how are you going to call out somebody when you've only seen half the story? And what is the other half? The other half is that if you're going to hear or see any of my videos, then before you call somebody like me out, right? You could call me out, that's fine. That's part of it. That's constructive. I receive all that because maybe there's something I need to hear. But hear the whole story before you call somebody out. Because there's also the practicum. If I speak about Chinese herbal medicine, if I speak of acupuncture, if I speak of the Akashic or Akushik records, if I speak of Qigong, if I speak of Tui Na, if I speak of dietary therapy, if I speak of the astral realm, if I speak of if I speak of realms beyond, if I speak of interdimensional realities as examples, right? If I speak of my little tiny Etsy store that I never speak on online, where I make Akashic crystals, where I make crystals from Lemurian quartz from my memories from there. There's a practicum that will always encompass that if I'm going to speak on it in public. I'm completely humbled by that. If I'm going to speak on it, I do not indoctrinate myself or give myself a title of any kind. But it's important that we not forget that the best coffee in the house, the best coffee I've ever had, no matter if I go to these like really nice cafes with these really expensive $2,000 to $15,000, $20,000 coffee makers, the best coffee I've ever had was from my grandma. She's not around anymore. She's passed on. And she did it with a coffee filter. And there's no other coffee like that in this world from my experiences. Now, I enjoy the coffee that's out there, but many of us are forgetting the simplicities. And I walk as one that if I didn't speak on that, we're going to forget these grandmoms, these grandpops. And it's important more than ever that the youth, especially the youth now, because they're coming as higher dimensional beings with more powers, such as remote viewing. And thinking that because they see us, they don't think that we don't see them. And what happens is that when they are able to capacitate that we see them, they're going to realize that they're us. And we're needing to be reminded by them of being mischievous, curious, being annoying, being pestering, and to bring us back into the earth, to bring us back into the practical side that people are continuing to receive all this information, but they're not knowing how to manifest it into their somatic nervous system, because as far as I know from my reality as I grew up, people haven't done that even before social media. So now all over information is coming in. Now the earth is expanding. Now the earth is expanding in vibration and resonance, and now we're in the dream state realm. And now you're going to see who hasn't done the work and who hasn't. It's almost like, I don't say it's too late, but now it's going to take them a long time, many lifetimes for them to continue on. But if they still have doors, and one of those doors is curiosity. They can still train. First time I met my first two dragons, real dragons, was before I heard of dragons in social media. I just saw them, I knew them, was when I was walking Bagua Circle. Well, what's Bagua Circle? Let's walk together, and then you will see that. you open up portals without realizing it. And I had to learn the hard way as I was training in an esoteric style of Kung Fu called Baguazhang. The 8-element or 8-trigram boxing. I started in 1989, so within the mid-90s, I was already speaking to my dragons, and I was speaking to no one. So when I started to see New Age people speak on them, it was with an open heart that they started to give me the vocabulary of even knowing how to explain what I was experiencing. So I needed them. And yet I probably had all the experience of like working with them my entire life. You feel what I'm saying? In this kind of school called Earth, it's the youth that I revere so much, that I protect so much, because they're the ones who will remind a lot of us stubborn souls, because sometimes it's understandable that many of us want to like check out of our vessel, because it seems really challenging, but I'll be the first one to tell you it's because we need to restructure our changing bodies with changing times. So we need to be able to stay youth at heart, and we need to align ourselves to the love we are, because once you align to the love you are with the things that you love, again, art, dance, poetry, architecture, whatever it is, that's eternal. That can never get old. And if it never gets old, it becomes ageless. Thus, you become ageless. Your vessel is irrelevant at that point. 8.